Our lives are a string of insights, flashes of inspiration that can be the catalyst for new ideas. However, our pace of life these days means we tend to miss some of them completely. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the host of the Simple Reflections podcast, a fortnightly series of interviews with people from all walks of life. Our conversations are an invitation to reflect on some of the simple insights my guests have had that have gone on to have a profound impact on their lives. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit, join us, slow down for a little while and see what shows up for you. Well, welcome to the next episode of the Simple Reflections podcast. Today I'm joined by a lovely lady, Jacqueline Hollows. Jacqueline is the founder of an organisation called Beyond Recovery, which is a community interest company. She founded that in 2015 with a view of taking a slightly different understanding into the criminal justice system and helping prisoners with the journey of their lives. She's not only doing that, but they're now working with professionals and have set up an academy teaching all kinds of people all kinds of things, which is wonderful. And we first met in 2017 when I was going through my training with One Thought, and Jacqueline was on the faculty at that point. So thank you so much for joining us. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Jacqueline, before we get going.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and maybe add that I am publishing my memoir this year, which is the journey of the time that I've worked in prison and so on. So that's quite exciting.
That's exciting. Yeah. And am I right to think there's another book that you've got out with some friends? Is that correct?
Yeah. So during the process of writing the memoir, I ended up doing a writing program, and as part of that, I said one day, it's a good theme for this podcast, because just on one of the classes, I said we should all publish a book. And from that simple sort of thought of we should publish a book, 8 people that were on there, 6 of them ended up in this book.
Amazing.
The book ended up being a series of books. So there's 2 now in the series, and there's another one in the planning process. Somebody else started a publishing business, so she ended up starting a whole new business off the back of it. And one of the authors decided that instead of writing a novel, she was actually going to write a memoir, and her memoir has now become a bestseller, and she's going around the world talking about it.
Fantastic. It's amazing, isn't it?
That was just from one little insight of, why don't we publish a book together? Yeah.
Well, it's a bit like this podcast started off with someone going, "Oh, Dave, you're quite good at chatting to people. You should just start a podcast." Oh, okay. Nothing. Came out of nowhere. Okay, yeah, let's have a look and see what that looks like. And here we are. Here we are having a conversation. So that's lovely. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
very exciting.
I love all of that, and the more that I see that, the more that I notice that in my life, the more that I see that's actually how it works. Mm-hmm. And it all starts with just a simple thought, or a simple just something very, very normal, and then you do that thing, and then something else comes from that, and then something else. And the times when I've tried to plan stuff actually never goes according to plan, no matter how much you plan. But also it's much more of a grind. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the middle of publishing this memoir, as I said, and I'm also doing a crowdfund for it. And as part of that, I'm rebranding myself and setting up the mailing list properly and everything. It's a ton of work to do, but because it starts with something that's simple and seems very simple and packed with just what the next step is. Mm-hmm. Actually, I don't mind doing any of that and just getting on with it. And every time it becomes a bit complicated, I realise that I'm going far too outside of just follow the next step.
Yeah, no, it's so true, so true. It's a lot of fun just going, okay, not quite sure at the moment. Okay, well,
yeah,
let's go and have a brew and see what shows up during that, and off you go. And it's just lovely exploring that with different people, with the stuff that's showing up for them, and it's exciting to hear about your various different book projects. So that's lovely.
Thank you.
So I don't know if there's anything particular that you want to talk about today, whether we just explore that that business about almost effortless creativity in terms of, if we're thinking hard about something, it feels like hard work. And if we're not, it just seems to show up at times. Not all the time, but it just, when it does, like, oh, wow, yeah, that's cool. And we just sort of step through that more lightly. I just wondered if there's anything you wanted to say to that at all.
Yeah, I think there's a real balance between there's a bit of a myth that you just sort of wait for something to happen. And I find that there is a balance between allowing that creative juice to flow and following that, but then taking inspired action, then actually doing the thing that shows up or doing the next step that comes. And back in the day, before I'd started Beyond Recovery and I was in IT and I really didn't like the work that I was doing, the very first thing that I remember seeing was, you can do anything. Like that's all. There wasn't a sort of tangible, this is what to do. It's just you can do anything. And actually sitting with that and allowing that to really resonate with me and seeing the beauty of that meant that I just went about my life in a lot more joy and noticing more creative opportunities. And then that you can do anything turned into, well, you could work in prison, and like, oh, okay, well, I'll give that a go. And you could write a book. Oh, okay, I'll give that a go. You could start a mentoring academy. I'll give that a go. And actually, it just shows that it really is just something very simple comes to mind, and you follow almost the feeling of that and the flow of that, and that it doesn't come with a ready-made project plan, with deliverables and timelines, and which is my, I would say I'm a recovering project manager. So
who isn't?
I lean into sheets and plans and writing things down, but I still do that. I sort of allow my intellect to play with that, and I just don't take it so seriously. And if it looks like it really isn't panning out how I thought it would be, I sort of, like you say, go have a brew or go for a run or go do something fun, and then things occur to me that either make that easier or that take me in a different direction and inform me that I'm getting overcomplicated or overthinking things.
Oh, that's lovely. And it's very true. It's that seems like a sensible thing to follow. Okay, what does that look like? And you just sort of start unpacking. Oh, right, okay. There's a little bit more to this than I thought, but that's okay. Right, which bit first? Okay, that looks like the right bit to start with. Oh, maybe not. Okay, change. Right, let's do that bit, and off we go. And it's more fun rather than, oh no, I've got to get it right. I remember when I was thinking about doing this work full time, the thing that was holding me back was the fear of not knowing what to do, almost not wanting to start because I was worried it might not work. Which is a really logical thing. And I knew in my mind that was just my thinking at the moment that was holding me back. And I also knew at some point something would shift and it'd be, I'd either pull the plaster off and go do it, or something would show up for me. And the thing that showed up was, it doesn't matter if it fails. Okay, that's fine. I could probably cope with that. If there's a chance that failure might be a thing, well, that's all right. We've done that before. Let's go and see what happens here. And as a result of that, there's a whole load of, I haven't got to get all the bits right to make it work. Let's just start and see what happens. And it's, it just feels much lighter. And I really enjoy that. Now that, given some of the work or the majority of the work that you've been doing with Beyond Recovery has been in a really potentially heavy environment, going into prisons. I wondered if there's anything that you've learned from that process that the listeners might find interesting and almost surprising along the way.
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the most surprising things for me was actually sitting in a room in a noisy, smelly, horrible place like a prison, and they're not pleasant, and forgetting and the boys in the room or the men in the room also forgetting that you're even in prison, and having this almost philosophical discussion about life, and seeing people who look like they are scary and you can have all sorts of judgments about them, coming up with the most wisest, amazing, creative things. That's a constant surprise and joy for me. And a lot of my prison work has stalled during COVID, and hence why I'm doing many other things now. But we were recently gifted the potential of working for 2 groups in HMP Portland, which is down in the south of the UK in Dorset. And the people that we were working with are what you call like the hardest to reach. And for sure, and we worked with them for 3 half days, two separate groups, 3 half days. And for sure, the first session was noisy, scary. You know, there was a particular man in there who deliberately wore his war face and just literally looked at you like that. And when he wasn't doing that, he was shouting and saying very volatile things about what he's done in his life and what's happened to him. And it was really, really, and a big personality took over the room. Now, I would have thought that you'd be scared, or you'd think, how can I shut him up because it's going to affect the rest of the group or whatever. But we didn't. We sort of went with it. We listened to him. We gave him the space. By the end of 3 days, which is just 3 half days, in fact, he was at a place now where I could put my hand on him and he would calm down. Where you couldn't even touch him by the at the start. And also he was coming out with really like wise things. And for instance, he would say, I know I wind myself up. Well, yeah, because there you go. Like he knows he's winding himself up. And I was able to say to him, well, you know when you do that thing and you wind yourself up and you see that, all you have to do is stop there instead of carrying on. Like, do you think that could be an option? And he did. And he actually came back to the second group and he was calmer. He was like a different person. Now, that's not me. I didn't do anything to him. I didn't make that happen. But underneath all of that is this calmer, actually a big, lovable teddy bear who wants to be okay and wants to do okay, and has had a very, very traumatic and completely sort of out there life. And if you look at that behavior and you think, well, there's no hope, but seeing hope there, it's a blessing every time, and that's the most surprising thing for me, is that even when, and I'm not phased that often, I've seen a lot now. I always say that I've worked with the toughest crowd, but I then will sometimes think, oh, how's this going to work? He's very loud and he's very dominant. What actually happens is the rest of the group saw how we interacted with this chap, and it calmed them down, because they could see he's not getting into trouble, but he's also not being allowed to dominate the room. And they were learning from him, and they all grew to love him. So they all grew to say, oh, he's such a softie at heart, and how can we help, and all of this. So that surprises me, and how they all gel together in a place where they have to wear their war masks all the time. And they end up being compassionate and talking about love and talking about, hope and resilience. That's amazing every time.
Yeah. And it's fascinating what a little bit of curiosity does in that room. It might have been you taking that curiosity and going, oof, okay, how's this going to go? It's like, it's a very different way of showing up rather than, oh my God, how are we going to do this? Which comes from a place of fear and sort of containment in a way of, I need to be on this. The wonder that's involved in curiosity just seems expansive. And, it does take a little bit of time sometimes for some people to feel comfortable in that different type of environment, because they're used to, I turn up, all guns blazing, and I'm expecting that in response, but that's okay. I can deal with that. I understand that. That's my space. I don't like it very much, but I know how to handle that. And it can be, it can be quite difficult sometimes for some people to go, this isn't normal. Why am I not being met with force here? But actually, that brings out the curiosity in them, and I think that's always an amazing thing. Even when we're feeling a little bit nervous about how that might be, we're aware that nervousness that we're feeling is just trying to guide us, going, don't worry, this will be all right. You just need to go through it gently and see what shows up.
Yeah. It still surprises me as well that the more me I am, the more I'm able to handle any situation. In the same group, I can think of a little group, a little band of merry men that were, sort of giggling and talking in the back and not really paying attention and having their own little mini group in a way. And when I'm faced with that, I'll just relax into that space of, we were talking about earlier of, well, I don't really know what to do here, so I'll be guided. And in the moment, I was guided to actually call them out and say, you are in the room where you've got the biggest gift of your life, where your souls can be nourished, and you're wasting it. And is that how you want to spend your time? Now, I couldn't script that.
Yep.
And I couldn't say that to every group because I'd probably sound weird, but that's what came to me in the moment. And it had such an incredible effect on them. And one man I could see was literally like lit up from the inside. He went bright and his eyes watered, and he just looked like I'd spoken straight directly to his soul. And that amazes me. So I used to go in a little bit with my own armor on, and what's the right thing to say, and can I really challenge these men, and who am I, and so on. But the more some of the boys call me Mama J, and the more Mama J I am, the better it turns out. and I think that's true for life.
Mm-hmm.
and every situation, no matter where you are. And that's been an incredibly helpful thing for me to see. And it's such a simple thing, really.
Yeah. No, the work that you guys are doing is wonderful. It's inspiring to see the changes that you're making in people's lives, where to a certain degree the world's put them on the rubbish heap, and they sort of put themselves there too, expecting more of the same, because, well, this is the lot that I've got, and it's probably going to be where I end up again. So it's now about learning more to keep myself out of this for as long as possible, rather than seeing that this is an opportunity to break out of it completely forever and do something entirely different. And I know, you've got a number of guys working for you that have made that work for themselves and that's awe-inspiring. And I know the value that they're having with people in their communities, people in their lives, people beyond their circles, which is great to see. I'd be interested to hear, you went into Beyond Recovery to go in and help out in prisons. That's branched out since then. And I wondered what it is that, other than necessity and COVID being one driver, what's led you down that route?
It's a really good question. And what's really interesting to me is I always said that the prison route was a route that, I followed that wasn't a plan that just came to me. That's what I did. I followed the next step and so on. And I always thought that I'd know when I didn't need to do that anymore, and so on. But actually, I was a little bit behind the knowing, and it was only last year. In fact, it was only a year ago, around about this time. And I was sort of listening to a podcast or whatever, and I was making a cuppa. The cuppers have got a lot to answer for, haven't they?
Haven't they just? They're the best things in the world.
Yeah. And I was making a cuppa, and I suddenly thought, you don't work in prison anymore. So I'd held on to it, even though the work had been very sporadic. I'd held on to that, from 2020 to 22 for 2 years, trying to make that work and pivoting and all the rest of it. And I went, you don't work in prison anymore. And I was like, oh, what do I do now then?
Almost like a jailbreak.
Yeah, it's me. Get out of jail free card. And it was amazing, because like the scales fell off my eyes. Then it was, well, what do you do now? And then there were, things came up, and there were things that I followed and tried and so on. But of course, naturally, then you see more opportunity. I thought, okay, well, one thing I do is finish my book, so that was one thing, one project that got started. But because of that, I then started to see, actually, there's a load of people that ask me for mentoring, and I've never considered myself a mentor, and they're all wanting this mentoring. Maybe I'll give that a go, So then I ended up setting up Mama J's Mentoring Academy and having clients and having retreats and so on. And now that's progressing into, I'm creating digital online programs for people and growing and scaling that part of the business. But it all comes from being able to go, oh, what do I do then? And not being, I felt really attached to being the prison lady and the work that we did in Beyond Recovery, because it was such a blessing. But instead of being able to let it go, it was more like, well, how can I keep doing that?
Yeah.
Even though it was obvious that just isn't working anymore. The criminal justice system is not an easy place to work. It doesn't let you in. And it doesn't like to pay for anything. So realizing that, I don't work in prison anymore. Like I say, again, it was a very simple, just a one-liner that came into my head. And it wasn't then followed by, oh, do this. It was just like, oh, what do I do then? And then seeing what's available and what next. And that sort of a pivot is perfect, because, people call it a pivot. I'm like, it's just what I did next.
Yeah.
But there's an official language for it. Yeah, apparently.
Well, yeah, it's a nice buzzword that people are hanging on to at the moment. It'll probably be called something else later on.
Of course.
But I think what's lovely that you brought out in that, and the sort of the running theme through all the episodes so far is that likeness to the, oh wow, yeah, that this is the next thing, but I don't know what that is, but that's exciting. It's a sort of gentle realization of, oh, okay, yeah, that's possible. And right, what's next? And that curiosity just sort of opens and blooms, and you don't quite know where it's going to take you, but it's going to be fun, whatever happens, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't know if other people are like this, and the listeners maybe resonate with this, but sometimes I find it easier to see the potential in other people than I do in myself. So sometimes I will get the thought, hang on a minute, if someone who's had, terrible life and committed lots of crime and done some really bad things, if they have absolute potential and health, which I always see, that must be true for me too. And I keep getting reminded of that, because I'm sort of the last person that I look at with the potential, and then I get reminded of it, and that moment was one of them, when I go, oh yeah, I can do anything. And then I'm sort of back back again instead of at the grind.
Yeah.
It's the feeling, isn't it, that tells you that, I knew I was in the grind. I knew I was trying too hard. I knew that I was trying to make something work that just wasn't working anymore. I wasn't ready yet to know that I needed to stop doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and that's cool.
That.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was in the last episode that went out with Rob Cook. We were sort of talking about the sort of safety blanket element of things, and it makes perfect sense to hang on to the safety blanket until it doesn't.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense to freak out if you haven't got it until you realize you don't actually need it. You're perfectly safe without it. It's not, when we are invested in the story, that's us. And it might feel uncomfortable and it might feel like hard work. That's just trying to nudge us to say, there's another way. You can be, there might be something else there that you're just not seeing at the moment. And then it's not about, I need to work harder to get through this. It's like, okay, let's just take a pause, have another brew, and step back and see where that takes us. And then it just unfolds a little bit more, and you go, oh right, that looks like the next thing to do.
Yeah, and it comes in its own time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I also think it's worth saying I'm a person who loves doing lots of things and, always has several projects on the go. And, a good example is that I've always wanted to learn magic. Uh-huh. So, learning magic's on my big long list of all the things that I want to do. And somebody recently said to me that what they've realized is that people like us who like to do a lot of things can't possibly live all the lives that we want to live. So in some alternative universe, another Mama J or another Jacqueline is doing some of that things, like she's a magician, right? And she's out there on the circuit. And I loved that, because for people who are struggling with what to do next, and how do I get the insight, they need to see that, well, actually just follow what occurs to you. For people like us who do loads of stuff, they need to see, or I certainly needed to see, that I don't have to do everything that comes to mind.
Yeah.
So I can sort of let those things come to mind. I can even maybe plan it out, and have a look at what it looks like on paper. But then I can let it go again, let it go back into the mix. And a really good example of following something and not knowing why you were doing it is I set up a running channel a couple of years ago, and I was, with my son, we were putting out these running videos, and every week for like 18 months, we put out a running video once a week. And you'll know, as a content creator yourself, that a 5-minute running video takes about 4 hours to make with all the editing and everything else. But we did it and we loved it. And then we stopped loving it. It started to become the deadlines come in and so on. And so I said, well, let's pause. We don't have to stop. We might pick it up again, but let's pause. And we haven't done another one since. So, the last one we did was over a year ago now. But the work that we did there that we didn't know what was for is now feeding into other projects that I'm doing and other potential that I'm seeing. And none of it was wasted, but it was fun and we wanted to do it. So you just do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun until it's not. When it's not, it's time to stop.
That's
and it's
right.
Not to say, it's not to say stop forever. It's just like, okay, yeah, I've had enough of peanut and banana sandwiches. Okay, whatever it happens to be, it's just like, okay, well, I want a break from something. Let's go and do something else, rather than going, no, this is what I do. This is what I do, and going over and over and over it, and getting more and more fed up with it.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. So, when's the next running video? No, sorry.
Very funny.
Not really. Sorry, everybody.
The skills. Well, the interesting thing was, I was asked, why are you doing this? And I said, I don't know. But I like it. I love it. And I'm doing it. And then, of course, amazingly, because that's how life works, now I'm looking at creating online courses and digital content for people all those skills that I learned and all that knowledge that I've got about how that whole thing works will absolutely it makes this process far easier for me, because I've already got, a bag load of skills that I can bring with me. And it also makes it way more possible, because I already know, I know this is possible. So all I need to do is get on and do it. And I find that fascinating, like my recovering project manager joke. I did that for years, but actually those project management skills are really useful to me now. And so nothing gets wasted, and no life experience gets wasted. None of the skills you learn get wasted. It all comes together in a beautiful set of ingredients that create, the sort of Jacqueline shaped cake at the end of it, or Dave shaped cake, or Dave shaped curry, or whatever. But it all has its purpose and its place, and so, never regret anything.
No, that's cool. It reminds me of, there's a lot of people leaving the forces that struggle with the prospect of what life in the real world, in inverted commas, is going to be like, what they've got, what value they can add. And there's a lot of talk about transferable skills, which is true. There are lots and lots of transferable skills. Half the battle is seeing the value in what you've learned to date and being able to see how that might work, in a different environment. And, I spent 17 years as an infantry soldier. That isn't a particularly useful skill in civilian world, which is great because it's not a particularly pleasant one. But actually, the people skills involved in that, the ability to plan, the ability to look things, look into the future, and or potentially not even worry too much about not knowing what's around the corner, and go, okay, well, let's see what we've got with what we know now. They're taken for granted. They're things that you just do automatically because that's what you've been brought up doing. But you don't see them as being part of who you are and what you have to offer. Well, no, I haven't got the qualifications that other people have got doing that in that industry. And the whole mind starts racing and getting caught up in the things that you think you don't have, when actually there's a whole load of skills that we all have all the time that we can take into anything. And the only thing that's talking us out of it is ourselves. And the fear and the trepidation that we have about it that might show up anxiously in an interview, that might put someone off looking at us going, oh, crikey, they don't look like they're owning this. They might still give you a shot, but equally they might not. And it's not your inability to do the job, it's the fear you have in yourself about your ability to do the job that gets in the way. How exciting is it to see that isn't necessarily true, and that we have potential to do, as you were saying earlier on, anything we put our minds to, if we're given the opportunity and we trust ourselves to know that I'll either know the question to ask or where to go and look something up, or that it might just show up and well, that makes sense to do that.
Yeah, it's funny. An example comes to mind that I don't normally share these days, but back in the day, before Beyond Recovery, I'd gone through a very difficult period financially and otherwise. And I'd actually got to a state where I couldn't get credit. I couldn't open a bank account for the business. It was very, very difficult. And fortunately, one of my directors refused to open a bank account for me because he said it would be the wrong energy. You got to go through this yourself. But my mindset was of this going cap in hands, how will I do this? It's going to be difficult, etc. And then during that process, I was setting up this new business. I'd actually even won a contract. All these other amazing things were happening. But every time I thought about that, it was like, oh no, I'm such a bad person. And overnight, I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, I've got a contract. Like, what bank isn't going to want to take that money? So overnight, I changed from this person who wanted to go cap in hand to this person who was like, well, I might bring my business to you, Mr. Manager. Let me interview you. And of course, that change in attitude, I thought of somebody who knew somebody who got me an interview with a bank. I ended up being interviewed. I ended up opening 3 bank accounts.
They're like buses.
with no problem at all. And it really taught me that attitude is everything, because when I believed I was somebody that couldn't get a bank account, guess what? I couldn't. Mm-hmm. And then when I suddenly not pretended or affirmed or anything, but I had that switch of, hang on a minute, of course you can get a bank account. That then a whole different energy came with it. Mm-hmm. And I got a bank account with the first person that I asked. And I reckon if I'd have, done 3, I'd have got 3 different banks. I'd have got 3 different places saying yes. And I 100% saw it. The only shift was me. Mm-hmm. It's like that story about when the hunter goes to the shaman and he can't get any game. Neither the shaman nor the hunter say that there's no game. They both know that it's within the person, it's within the hunter that what needs to change. Mm-hmm. And I really see that in all of us.
No, that's cool. And it's true. The only things that really hold us back is our thinking in the moment. I was walking at the weekend on the Fife Coastal Path, and there's a great section. It's the first time I've done it, which is at low tide, you can get round the coast, and they put in a chain walk because bits of it are quite tricky and you need to hang on to something. And one of the youngsters we were with got halfway through and then freaked out. So, I can't go forwards and I can't go backwards. So, well, we can't stay here because, there's a cliff behind us that we can't climb. And when the tide starts coming in, we'll be cut off from both going forwards and backwards. So we can't stay here. And if we do, we'll be here for 12 hours until the tide goes out again, and then it'll be dark. So we just need to let's just see what the options are. Let's just have a breather for a minute and see what she's like. I can't move. More tears. I can't move. That's okay. We're all right. We don't have to go anywhere just now. We will at some point, and you'll know when that some point is. And after just literally 5-6 minutes, that was all it was. Yeah, I think I can go forwards.
Wow.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go with that. And the only thing holding her back in that moment was fear of, that was tricky. That last bit was tricky, and I don't know what's coming next. I don't know if I can cope. And that's okay. Knowing that, that's keeping her safe, was keeping her safe in that moment. Yeah. It wasn't true. She absolutely could. She just didn't quite believe it in that moment until she did. Yeah. And it's fascinating seeing how that unfolds in people. And you know that you've seen that many of times. But it's beautiful. It's what we see in each other all the time. And as you were saying, we tend not to see it in ourselves so much because we're not reflecting on it as much. We are more invested in it as well. And it's the only thing we're experiencing, our own thought in that moment. And until we catch it and go, okay, no, of course I can get a bank account. Of course I can go forwards. I just need to do it gently. Let's see what shows up.
Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I think that when you are inspired by someone, you are actually seeing within yourself potential, but it looks like it's the other person that's inspiring. But what's really happening is within your own mind is a spark of, oh, wow, there's potential. And doesn't mean you have to be like the other person or do what the other person's doing. But it's just, if you can look inward from that, you'll see actually we get sparked all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just our conditioned thinking of how we are and who we are in life that keeps us in place. But those sparks are happening. So, look for the sparks, I would say.
Amazing. I think that's a really good point to finish. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I just wondered if there's anything that, that you guys are up to at the moment that you would like to share with people. We can put links into the blurb, but just in case you wanted to explain what you're doing that might be of interest to people.
Yes, so we do. I do a monthly update on our YouTube channel, so people can check out those updates. I'll send you a link. And we do a bi-monthly free webinar that anybody is welcome to join. And I'd love people to follow me on Medium. I write on a platform called Medium and write stories, about the work that we do. So that's out there as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't quite believe 40 odd minutes has disappeared. But thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the conversation, feel free to subscribe and join me and my new guest next time. If you're interested in the work I'm doing, or you think I can be of service to you or your organisation, please email dave@simplicityofmind.co.uk. Remember, see if you can find time to slow down and reflect. Those simple ideas might be worth listening to. Take care, and I hope you can join me in a couple of weeks.